Hello! Hope you guys are all okay and all good. Welcome to another video and my February wrap-up. I read a not quite as grand as last month total of 3 books in the month of February. It wasn't quite as impressive as last month. It's certainly not quite as impressive as the TBR that I put forward for myself, which was somewhere in the region of like 10 books. I think we all knew that wasn't gonna happen. So all 3 of these books were on my TBR, and actually I have got most of the way through another book that was on my TBR pile, so I'm quite pleased with myself in terms of like the progress that I made in terms of like a bunch of queer stuff. The first book that I read in February was an audiobook that I was finishing, which was Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last 12 months, you probably already know a little bit about Call Me By Your Name. It's been nominated for bunches and bunches and bunches of awards without actually winning that many or any of them. The film, that is. The film came out in the last 12 months. And it's been nominated for Golden Globes and Oscars and all sorts of things. And BAFTAs. And I think it won adapted screenplay at the BAFTAs. It won something at the BAFTAs. I was quite pleased that it won something at the BAFTAs because I actually saw the film last week as well. I'm going to talk about that. Let's just talk about the book for a little bit first, shall we? The book is about a boy called Elio who every summer him and his family go to Italy and stay there for the summer, and every year they have a scholar or a writer come and stay with them. They work with his father, they work on their manuscript and all sorts. And this year the man who has come to stay with them is a man called Oliver, who Elio is quite immediately and quite intensely drawn to. The story is mostly based around one long hot summer where Elio is falling head over heels in love with Oliver, quite unexpectedly, and it follows their story as the two of them become a lot more entangled. It follows Elio basically as he's going through a big change in his life, and he's making mistakes and he's discovering himself and discovering who he is. The writing in it is absolutely stunning. Like, I listened to the audiobook, which is read by Armie Hammer, which was a bit weird for me, actually, because Armie Hammer plays Oliver in the film, so really the audiobook should have been read by Timothée Chalamet, but I mean, swings and roundabouts, whatever. But like, so it was a little bit weird, especially then you see the film and it's Armie Hammer playing the other character, so it was a little bit, the voices were a bit mixed up in my head. But that didn't take away from the fact that it's an absolutely gorgeous book. It's so well written, and it's so evocative and emotive, and you can feel the heat coming from the words. You can feel every moment. It was stunning. I didn't want to stop listening to it. It was so gorgeous. It was very intense. I think there were moments where it got a bit too intense for me, as in like the way that Elio is feeling for Oliver, some of the things that he's doing, it felt like it was pushing boundaries and pushing quite far for me. The intense feelings that he had for Oliver, while they felt true, they also felt very teenage, and they felt overly intense for me at points. I don't think that's really a failing in the book. I think it's just an observation. It didn't stop my enjoyment of it. I think there were just times where I was like, oh, okay, girl, you're taking it a bit too far with regards to Elio and the way that he's feeling. But then the interesting thing is that I went to see the film earlier on this month as well. I had a day off from work. It just so happened there was a showing of the film. I've not finished the book too long ago. And I was complaining in my previous video where I talked about my TBR that I didn't get a chance to go and see the film, and I was complaining that there was like barely any showing. So I saw a showing and I thought, you know what, George, put your limitless Odeon card where your mouth is and go and see this film. So I went to see it, and what's really interesting is that the intensity, like, the film is great. The performances are just flawless across the board. Like, it made me weep. It was just so good, and it looked beautiful, and the scenes from the book that they picked to put into the film were just executed to perfection. It was such a true and strong adaptation. It's rare that you see one that is so close to the source material. It felt to me like it was done with such love, which is great. I think the one thing was perhaps that it sort of lacked the intensity of the book in a way. There's a lot of, like I said, the book is very intense and very hot and sweaty and goes very deep, whereas the film didn't quite. I think it's hard because obviously it's in first-person narrative, so you do get a lot of Elio's thoughts in the book, which is very hard to translate onto screen, so you didn't really get a lot of that intensity. You still got the heat and the sweatiness and the sex, but you didn't get the intensity of his feelings. Also, it was very tame. For something that was a 15, it was very tame, and One might argue, if one was that way inclined, that you would see more sex in a 12 film than you did in a film that's a 15. And it was only a 15 because it was 2 men, which is bullshit. Let's be honest for a second, it's utter bullshit. Anyhow, that's a conversation for another video. Maybe I should go into that in another video. Maybe I should talk about the film more. Who knows? But basically the book is really great and I do recommend it if you want some like literary queer book. Check out Call Me By Your Name, and I do recommend the audiobook. It's really, really fun. The next book that I read was The Last Romeo by Justin Myers. This was another audiobook that I was listening to. This tells the story of a boy called James who is it tells the story of a man called James who is 34 and his 6-year relationship has just imploded, and encouraged by his friend Bella, he starts online dating and writing about it anonymously via a blog. But then he ends up going on a date with a closeted Olympian, and he ends up writing about it on his blog and it goes viral, and suddenly he's realising that some things in life are better left unshared. This book is my favourite book of the year so far. It's light, it's funny, it deals with some pretty serious issues with a really light touch, it made me laugh. It ticked all the boxes for me. It was swoony, it was cringy, it was funny, it broke my heart in places, and I really, really loved it. I've done a full review of this book on my channel. I will leave a link in the description box below. There will also be a link to these books in the description box below, which I should have mentioned already. But as ever, there are links down below if you want to go and check it out. It's a fantastic book. My favourite of the year so far. Absolute, unfiltered love for this book. It's so fantastic. And the last book that I read in the month of February was The Carnivorous Carnival by Lemony Snicket, the 9th book in the series of unfortunate events. This was me getting back on the bandwagon for my series of unfortunate reading, which has fully vanished from the internet. I'd started it over a year ago. I stopped it after book 8. I'm back on it now. The video for this should be going up quite soon if I've actually managed to get around to doing the edit. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It was really nice to get back into the series. I'd forgotten how much fun it is and how clever it is and how much it plays with words and language, which is always really fun to get in a book. It's such a great series. If you've never read a series of unfortunate events, but you've watched the Netflix series, you are missing out on a whole world of fun detail and fun sections of the book, and quite like dark and disturbing sections of the book. It's so great. I do recommend. I will forever recommend this series. It's one of my favourites as a kid. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that too. There'll be a full video for that going up quite soon, hopefully. That's the end of this video. Those are all the books that I read in the month of February. What did you read in February, dear friends? I would love to hear from you. If you've read any of these books, if you have any prevailing opinions on Call Me By Your Name, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. Throw a celebration, let whatever's in you out. What's that from? If you know what that's from, we can be best friends. So that's the end of this video. If you liked this video, don't forget to put a thumb on it and to subscribe if you want to see more. I love each and every one of your faces, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!